Hello, guys, and welcome to episode 25 of Culture Talks. Today is a very special one for Sean and I, simply because we're joined with the general manager of Odyssey Bowl, David, who we have worked with for quite a number of years now, and we're delighted to have him on. We planned to have him on from the first episode, but he's a busy guy, so we're able to nail him down a wee bit and speak to him today. So David oversees the operations, and we work very closely with him alongside Odyssey Bowl. And he's fantastic what he does. He's actually grown up through the organization, essentially. He went to uni while he started working with us, and he grew up and he just flourished, really. And we'd be lost without him. But look, it's a wee bit of an intro to you. David, do you want to give a quick overview of obviously who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so obviously I'm David. As JP said there, I've been in Odyssey Bowl now for the best part of about 6.5 years. When I first started out, it was just a part-time team member role alongside going to university, and then enjoyed working in customer service and being part of the team. And then, luckily enough, as I was graduating, a position came available sort of towards the end of my time at university for a supervisor position, which I went for. And then I was doing that for a few years and enjoyed the different responsibilities and seeing how the business runs day to day, and the different processes that go on in the background that you don't really notice or even know about until you're in doing it. And then I was doing that for about 2.5 years, and then September last year. Was September, wasn't it?
September, yeah. In September, I think, starting October, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I got became general manager and having more responsibility, overseeing more day to day and bringing through different team members in the supervisor positions and getting them trained. And I think this last year has probably been definitely one of the most sort of stressful but most enjoyable, having that responsibility. And it's something I've really enjoyed and like grew in confidence with as well, because the challenges that a year and a half ago I'm like, what? Kind of once you're in, you do it and you just sort of get on with it, really.
It has, David. It's been pretty quick growth as well. We look at it, and I think in the last year in particular, I suppose you were left in the deep end in many senses, because like we were talking last night, we're saying about the Odyssey and about how things change and about creating a succession plan for leaders and things like that. And I mean, obviously, whenever we both stepped away together, but April, who was in place as well, went on to do teaching as well. So out of the 4 people who were in that management team, you were the only one left. And the others coming through they weren't new, they were all in the business and they all had great experience in the business, but they were coming in that position as new employees, as supervisors. And then so you were faced with that challenge as well of leading them, and you've done an amazing job. Like, I mean, we talk about it regularly about how good you are and how well you fit at the role. What have you found as the biggest challenges with it, and what have you kind of enjoyed most about it?
Well, I think in the last year, it's sort of being the one on site who people turn to for answers. So like before, like I'd had yourselves to turn around and be like, what do I do here? But then obviously once you all stepped away and I was in that position, you'd have people turn around and asking questions that I might not have been asked before, and trying to take a minute, think about it. Like there was times where at the start, I generally was like, give me 15 minutes to think about it, I'll come back and tell you. I think that it took me a while to adjust to that, because it was kind of like, right, they're coming to me now to like instruct them on what needs done.
Yeah. And
in terms of Odyssey as well, a challenge was obviously the building work and the redevelopment of the actual pavilion, and then the effect it had on ourselves. Like, so we had to lose space, and then it's trying to maintain and run a business while it's also juggling the side effect of next door being a building site and builders coming in and out and having to come in and close certain sections off, and just generally something that day to day you would never expect to encounter. It was just one of the things that this is what's happening now, so you need to try and work with it. And
I think that's something you can easily forget as well, isn't it? We can look at it from this point now. You do forget about all that stuff that was going on.
I mean, it was there was uncertainty, obviously, at the start of the year about what space they were going to take away and how much they were going to take or give us. And obviously this year has been a bit mad. You kind of forget everything that started before COVID.
That was the challenge, and then COVID comes.
But as you say, you do kind of forget about it. And now, because the new structure of the building's in place, you're kind of like, you quickly become used to it. And like when you see old photos, like I seen a thing come up on our timeline from 2 years ago, whenever we done the glass walking, and you get to see the old front doors, and it looks so different. It looks strange, but something you were so used to for so long.
I know. I think that firstly, like the job that you've done with us stepping away, like one of the things we talk about is creating a pipeline of leaders before we stepped away, and like even when we got closer to the time, for us there was a nervousness and a worry for, will the team be able to cope, and then obviously for you, because like you were stepping up 2 levels almost, you were stepping up into a position that we knew you could do, but likewise, even though as much as we're always at the end of the phone or a text, and we always have been, it is difficult to have all the answers. And one of the best things I noticed about you was you didn't take the attitude that you have all the answers. I found it even from speaking to the team throughout the development plans that we would normally do with them, and the feedback very early on from them about you was, it sounds like we're quizzing them all on you when you're not looking, but it just the general, people wanted to go out of their way to compliment how well you were doing, and I think it actually generated so much employee buy-in because they seen that you worked with the majority of those people, because as many people know, we talk regularly about how we don't really have a whole lot of turnover. You would have people staying there long periods of time, and the teams that you work with day to day around you are still, a lot of them are still there, and you can see the admiration that they had for you, and maybe just a little inkling in the back of their head going, do you know what, I think I could do that as well. Like he's done that, and I've seen his example, and do you know what, give me a bit of confidence to maybe go for something in the future. So before even going any further, it's obviously, it's really admirable what you've done, and to be honest, you come into your own very quickly.
One of the great points is, remember when we used to be able to socialize with people, was the Christmas dinner last Christmas, whenever they kind of spontaneously came together. What?
I was like, where's he going with this?
You thought there was a dodgy story coming out, but don't do them in public. We'll keep that where it was.
I was going to say, what Christmas dinner are you talking about?
No, but it was last Christmas dinner, wasn't it? When Andy had sort of kicked it off, where they sort of spontaneously came together. Basically, say, well done, thank you to you.
Yes, it was. Yeah, that's right. And they give you that award. For anyone watching, every year we make sure to do like a wee, and it's a wee bit of a joke, but it is a way of rewarding people and recognizing the work that they do. But sometimes it can be based on personality traits in the nicest way. Sometimes it can be based on something that somebody loves to do, whether it's loving an area. But we'll always give an individual award, and everybody is a winner essentially, and that's the attitude at the award. So I think at the Christmas dinner, I think that when we go into places and do that, a lot of people, workers, are sort of like, what are they doing? Because we're not halfways. But what I loved about that was, and we had no inkling about it at all, like, because the team, we basically just showed up on the night. Usually years gone past, we would have organized the whole thing. We just showed up on the night, and they went so far to give David an award. Did they give you a gift as well, or like a trophy, or?
They gave me a wee sort of trophy on the night, but when I got into work the next day, sort of closer to Christmas, they put together done a bit of whip round and give me a gift voucher.
Amazing.
Which I thought was really nice. And as you say, like on the night, like I wasn't expecting anything like that, and I would never expect anything like that. But it was just nice. They receive something back, because, as you say, like sometimes you don't hear feedback when you're in a position of a manager, and it's just nice to see. But as you said earlier on, JP, it's kind of like, I think my transition, I've kind of been lucky in a sense where I've worked with them on a at their level, and then moved up throughout the organization, and I think I've built good relationships early on. So every time I've progressed, they've helped me in as a way, because I know there's obviously times where people struggle to adjust whenever they go into position and people don't take to them. But I think everyone I work with, and as you say, they've been there a long time. Most of them are still there. They kind of know that anything I was going to ask them to do, I'd done with them before, and they always sort of give me a chance in that sorry, in that sort of setup.
Yeah. I think
and you're right. That is a challenge sometimes to offer people stepping up that have been in an organisation, and for anybody, because we'll put this out as a development leadership kind of thing. You know, for anybody who is an aspiring leader, have a look at and sort of listen to your experience in it. And I think for a lot of people that can be a difficulty because you're working within an organisation, and it depends on the culture of the place. That some people may be a bit jealous of someone moving in that position, or maybe think that they should have got the job, or whatever the case may be. But the culture in Odyssey Bowl was a culture of respect, and as you say, you built so many positive relationships with everybody in there, and they were there to support you, which was really good. And it does make that transition much easier. And it is this thing, and that's one of the things that key points out. You said there, anything you ask them to do, so it is always that way. It's always you're asking somebody to do something because we're all obviously working together as one team.
Yeah,
that's right. So what you give us a few of the challenges. What's been the big plus? I know we've talked about one of the plus sides there, but what have you really enjoyed about it?
Probably gaining the confidence, and for those challenges I mentioned at the start, gaining the confidence and being able to then work with it and progress as long, and kind of overall, like I was looking through one of my notebooks the other day, and I was flicking through from the start of the year till now, and just seeing how much you've actually done and look back on. So I think kind of just looking back at my own development and seeing how I've overcome challenges that at the start I was scared of, really didn't know what to do, and like things like that Christmas dinner and hearing feedback from different people always helps boost your confidence. Like that sort of came nicely. It was after sort of the first 3 months after being in the position, so it was kind of like a nice wee confidence boost, like, hey, you're actually doing all right. So then after, obviously what happened with COVID happened, but then coming back in again in July there, I kind of felt myself develop and kick on a wee bit more and taking responsibility.
Yeah, honestly, I was blown away. I am blown away by your ability to adapt and with the changes that have been going on. Like you've put 2 feet in and made sure that you took full control over it. And obviously, we're always there. We're always going to make sure that things are taken over nicely. And Sean naturally takes more of a role because he was the general manager, so he sees more from your perspective exactly what's going on, the pressures that go on there. So he would be more in it than I would anyway. But the admiration that I have, and I know Sean agrees with me when we say, like, to watch your journey in just over a year, and you were fantastic anyway. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, it wouldn't have panned out the way it did unless we thought you were 100% capable of it, and you were. And sometimes it's about giving you your own space. And for us, I feel like that was what we done to begin with, to see how you went. And then at the Christmas dinner to see that, it kind of like gratification, but it's like confirmation of, right, well, we made the right decision because you're clearly acing it and the team are backing you to the hilt. But you mentioned there, like I had said about, the team seemed to really get behind you. I think it's a few factors. I think because you're a young fella, like, and a lot of them are just same age as you. They grew up with you, some of them. And some are friends of yours that you kind of come into the organization together, and and then you've grown as a person in it. And I think that for you, I think it's a massive wealth of knowledge, and I can see the confidence difference. I can see the confidence difference shift massively for you over that period of the year, especially coming back in. It was like total ownership from your perspective, coming back off the lockdown issues, and now obviously, unfortunately, the team are off again. But likewise, you still maintain your position. And do you know what? People, as Sean mentioned, sometimes people can find it difficult stepping up from a level to another level, and people can get a bit jealous. They can make life difficult for you, but thankfully, it just seemed to fit. everybody knew that you were the best person for the job. We knew you were the best person for the job, and so it was always going to be you. I mean, I remember conversations, Sean, we used to have about David when he was still at uni, and we were going, it's a pity he, not that it's a pity, but it's a pity he's not available now to step into your role. And at that stage, we didn't even know if you were even interested in management or stepping into that role. Maybe you weren't. Maybe you didn't even realize you were. But then I remember, as Sean mentioned, April stepped away 2 weeks before we did. So we lost a limb essentially before we made the big move, and then we stepped away 2 weeks later, sort of thing. Well, I stepped away after Sean because he took a holiday, but
he did after I did, because I earned my holidays. But one of the things there as well I was saying is, as well as David stepping up, then obviously Nadine and John and Emma were all stepping up too, and it's been a big learning curve for them too, which has obviously been something that you've had to take on directly. I don't know, we're trying to support that, but you've had to take that on directly. But I think they've done really well too. So a credit to them too for stepping up into that role. And it was the same way. It all worked the same way in terms of how people really respected them as well. Mm-hmm. And they were, I suppose, celebrating the opportunity that they had as well. And that's one of the important things that we've always done, is recruiting internally. So I don't think we've ever recruited externally actually in the past 10 years in any positions. All our full-time positions within Odyssey Bowl are filled with people who have come in on a part-time basis as general team members. April was the one. But she actually came from Movie House though. So
yeah, she came from another site.
Yeah, but no, we've had a great team. We've been very fortunate. We talk a lot of times about formal and informal leadership, and within Odyssey Bowl, we have a lot of informal leaders, and even now you can look around you and some of the team members, and you can easily pick out people who would be able to move into leadership roles. And you know what? I only wish we had more roles sometimes in terms of leadership to be able to push people into it, because there's so many good people there.
Even in terms of like the ones who like before lockdown, I don't keep talking about lockdown, but there's ones who before who wouldn't have flagged as being a leader, but obviously when they come back and obviously working in their own bubbles, there's ones who stepped up and sort of took ownership of their own group and led them, and where before they kind of would have been happy to take a back seat, but that sort of change helped bring the best out of them as well, which was good to see. I don't want to go as far as saying surprising, but it was just wasn't expected in that sense. I don't know if it wasn't looking for that at the time when the bubbles were happening. Obviously, it was everything else going on, but when they were then in place and when they were doing the work, you could see it happening over time. People growing in confidence and taking ownership.
People thriving in different situations, sort of thing.
Yeah,
it's kind of like a platform. Yeah, it's like giving somebody a platform, and then it's kind of something you try to mimic when you're doing workshops. You try to provide opportunities for people the natural leaders to come to the forefront. Depending on the type of workshop it is, but you always see, okay, you have the chatty person, right? You've got the person who might be the natural leader in the group who stands up and they're actually able to just influence other people's opinions. And Sean mentioned we have a lot of informal leaders. We have a lot of people who have a lot of influence in the team. But it was interesting, like I remember, because at that stage I was looking after the rotas, and it was interesting having the conversations with the other duty managers and hearing, such and such is doing really well, or they're actually working above the level they were before COVID. And I think it's when you provide a platform and it's almost like fit the rules. There's always the person who runs the pace. Like we were just on about Crichter, like he'd be one of the people who would work at a high pace and he wants to get everything done because he wants to get out the door, and that's fair enough. But you've other people who everyone will go to for the little answers while they're on the floor. You've got the person who isn't maybe as experienced as everybody else. Everyone fits into these roles, just like the management team. Everyone fits into their own different roles, and that's why you need people to come together that way. And I think the bubbles are, if anything, an interesting case study to see that. And for us moving forward, it's important to highlight the people who did stand out naturally and give them an opportunity to try and excel on that, because we're always thinking the next pipeline. We're always thinking who's going to be the next leaders. And I mean, we have a fantastic team there. We're very lucky, but it took a long time to get there. I think I look back to whenever we first started out, and I think recently, Sean, we were chatting about that, about how we had a team that we inherited. We moved in, and it wasn't at all, but long before you came in, David, like we didn't have a team that is anything like it is now, but that was because we weren't involved in the recruitment and the onboarding of it. So it's a nice feeling. It's a nice feeling to hear you say that you were able to see people, you were able to observe people in them groups from your own leadership perspective and say, do you know what, actually, because you'll have naturally been thinking who could be the next person to come through, and it's great that you had that emotional intelligence. It's great that you've been able to develop it. You always had it, but in terms of the sort of top of the structure attitude, you know, if you looked at yourself, I suppose that's a good question. Like, do you think, what are the biggest differences? Do you think if you looked at yourself, not this time last year, but just before we stepped away last year, and now, do you see differences in yourself?
Yeah, well, I think confidence is the main one.
Yeah.
Growing in confidence over the last year or so. But also I think at that time last year, I was kind of like more focused sort of day to day, right? This, as long as this is done and as long as the doors are open and everything's working and we get everyone and get everyone again locked down day to day, we'll take it from there. And then as time went on, I kind of looked more at the bigger picture, sort of working with people who are there and developing them. And it's kind of something I've going to enjoy. It was something before I never really, like even as a supervisor, I never really, not that I didn't think about it, but it was just something I kind of felt I've always kind of struggled a wee bit with.
Yeah.
But then as time went on and you actually start doing it and sitting down and doing development plans with people, you see their growth. And I think thinking in terms of that and sort of, as you say, putting the pipeline in place and who's next and looking to see who else you can bring through or who else you can further, really, as I say, it's beneficial for the business because everything grows and moves on. So it's good to know sort of what's coming next kind of thing. And in terms as well, for the people who have came and went, it's good to see their progress and see how much they've enjoyed their time being there, but also like knowing that their path lies elsewhere and obviously helping them develop and grow to go and achieve what they want to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important to allow people to move on and to grow in a way. Like it would be completely against everything that we tried to create and what the philosophy that we have as a management team of that site, that, you know, it would, if someone came to us and said, I want to be an astronaut, it'd be pretty hypocritical for us to go. I know that's a far-fetched example, but, you know, it'd be hypocritical of us to say, no, don't do that. Because you're a great worker and we want to hold on to you. Because what in fact actually happens there is, if you hold that person down, they're going to be a different person to what you're used to, because their aspirations, we're bringing them elsewhere. And you're not a very good leader if you just say selfishly, no, I want to hold on to you, or in worst case scenario, manipulate the person to think that, no, this is the best thing for you.
As for you.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason as well, like because of the culture created, that's why people hung around for so long, because they knew everything was genuine and you were there to help them grow. Obviously you want the business to do well, but I think putting time and effort into them, they give back as well. So they are helping the business grow by putting your time and effort into them and developing them as people.
Yeah,
that's the kind of turnover you want, isn't it? You know, when you know people are going on to do great things. And one of the things we always say was, anybody moving on, we kind of always want them to be able to look back and say, you know, I got this from working with that team or working on Odyssey Bowl, or I got that, you know, and then that's helped me progress in my future. And I think that's great for any business to be able to say that, because it's about the brand as well. And we want everybody who walks away from there to be able to say something positive about the brand, because especially where we live, like, I mean, word of mouth is a big thing as well. And it really, really plays into it a lot. And like, one of the things I would always kind of say, even the people who left us under negative circumstances, sometimes shook hands on the way out. You know, people make mistakes, and that happens in every organization. But they still left in good terms somehow. And that's always been the way. And you found that too, David, that because you've had to obviously take on more I mean, again, every organization has tough conversations that you have to have with people, and that's one of the things that I've really seen. And you took it head on, though. I mean, any circumstance that needed to be faced, and you were kind of saying, "Do you want us to come down and give you a bit of support?" And you were going, "No, I have to deal with this." And how do you think that's helped build your confidence as well? The fact that you've went and done it in that way.
Yeah, I think it kind of, like, obviously no one likes having the tough conversations, and no one likes it, but I think in terms of sorting things, it's better to say it as and when, or pretty soon after something happens or whatever it needs to be spoke about. rather than letting it run on and fester. And it might just spiral out of control or just cause we other knockout problems. But I think in terms of myself as well, it was kind of trying to put my own stamp of like authority on it, like and dealing it with myself rather than having the case of like getting someone else to come in and do it for me. And obviously it's not a nice conversation to have ever, but it's part and parcel of the job role, unfortunately. And just comes with the territory. So it's just, in my thinking, it was like, I'm going to have to do it someday, so why not today?
I mean, thankfully for us, disciplinary conversations have been few and far between even in the past 10 years, but at the same time, when they do come up, when they do happen, they're always by far the worst part of the job. There's just no getting away from it, and they are what they are, and sometimes you just have to, as you say, get in there and deal with it, and then try and move on, because these things happen, and you always want to do the nice things, I think, and a lot of stuff that you pointed out there in terms of development and seeing people grow, like that's been for me in management, that's always been the big thing that I've loved about it, and I can see you taking that on as well, and your enjoyment for that too. So there is obviously, like, management's a tough game sometimes, and one of the things you mentioned earlier on was, managers don't often get a lot of the praise for things, and that's just the nature of it. You're there to serve the team that you're working with, but you've obviously created something special because you have got the praise, and we've heard it firsthand from all the team members, and honestly don't believe there's anybody at all would have a bad word to say, which is a real testament to you. I'll tell you the truth when we stop recording. But it's a real testament to what you've done and what you've achieved in such a short space of time. And you're young to me now, but you've matured so quickly.
Yeah.
In terms of action management as well. And it's just, I don't even know where I'm going here, but it's just the praise what you've done, because it has been excellent. And I wouldn't say I'm surprised by it, but I don't even know what way it is to word it, but I love the fact that you've been the one there, because in all honesty, you've taken so much pressure away from us. And you've made our life so much easier in the past year.
I think what you were saying there about Sean said about you taking things head on, and you said it's pack and parcel, and it is. But I believe that you knew it was probably best for you to do that, because essentially it becomes your team, and we say it's our team, we believe it's our team because we all are in the same team, but you're on that site, you're running that team, and I think that it would be blurred lines if sort of Tweedledum and Tweedledee starts coming in and starting to do your disciplinaries and stuff, and I think I remember at the time that attitude of, if you can imagine, like this is a bad example, but like a doctor ready to go with their bag, and that's how I always feel with Odyssey, as in if something's needed, we'll put in, and if shit hits the fan, we'll be there. And in those scenarios, I remember early on when there was a few issues, and if there was conversations to be had, and I remember thinking, right, we'll get ready to go, and that was maybe just the same attitude that we would have always had, which is you want to be part of the solution at all times. But then I was really taken aback by how quickly you took on that role of, no, leave it to me, and you know what I actually need is maybe soundboard what I done and what was said with you guys afterwards, or let's have a conversation together afterwards and see how you think I done it. And that was because it's been a learning curve for us as well. Like we were used to being the be all and end all of the site, and then take a step back and to watch how you've led a team of managers as well, because you didn't just step up to almost full responsibility of everything, but you also had to then look at the development of a team of managers who are looking to you as the person with all the knowledge and all the answers. And you mentioned earlier on there about, like, one of the big changes you noticed was how people would come to you with the answers, and at first you sort of go 15 minutes, and I think we've all felt that sort of blind panic of, in a scenario, depending on the type of emergency or depending on the type of query it is, you kind of go in and go, just give me a minute, and you're trying to keep face, and then you go in the office and you're like pulling your hair out, like, what am I actually
and see, just on that point as well, just for anybody who is listening, who finds themselves in that position, that's good to do as well. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. Take a second. The answer straight away. Don't just give the wrong answer or any answer. Take the time and have a think about it.
But I think that's why David's been so successful, because David, you've came to it without the attitude. There's no cockiness to you. There's no bravado. There's very much an earnest sort of genuine want to help people, and that shines through. And I think that the team knew that was you as a worker and as a person and as a team member. And then when they see that, there's no. I mean, look, I believe you're charismatic, but you might not describe yourself as that way, But I look at you as somebody who people look to as a genuine, like you have a natural leadership quality. I know that you can use examples. You would always be in positions where you'd be like captain of a football team, and I know you love your football and falling into those roles, but that's a natural thing that does actually. That's why how many times, Sean, have we done interviews with people, and David, many times have we done interviews with people who have no experience at all. They've never had a job. And sometimes the easiest way to bridge the gap is to say, look, well, sports, is there a way that you can explain that you maybe led a team or you added value in teamwork? And for you, just have this, there's like a calmness to your approach. And I can only imagine being part of your management team of John and Emma and Nadine, having real confidence and there being an openness to approach you with a problem, because there wouldn't be any fear of judgment. There would be very much because you're the type of person that just needs are rolled up at all times. You just want to because you are a team player,
I think I've always sort of took the approach that like no one's perfect and everyone's going to get something wrong at some point, and there's no point trying to put on this big show that everything and you can do everything. And like I think it helps with people as well that like if someone does make a mistake, they can come and say, look, I've messed that up, rather than like I've always like even I think it's probably what helped me sort of mature quickly, because like I had you guys around me from when I was like, well, from I was 19, but then a supervisor at 21 and growing, and I always like encourage people that if they don't know something, ask. Like question that I'd rather someone ask me how to do something than be like, no, I know what to do, and then go ahead and do it wrong for a long period of time. Like I think there's kind of a stigma that people don't want to feel like they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So they're trying to bluff it in some way, but like just come and ask. And I think that sort of openness sort of helps develop everyone. And I think in terms of dealing with issues on the floor, I think me giving that to them, and I think I was with them as well. They sort of give me the same for the first while, where they know that I might not have got it 100% right, but my intentions are in the right place, and they know that when I am kind of trying to do something, or if I come and asking for use, if they had to say, look, I'll come back to you, and I'll go for advice to bounce it off us. But it has helped in terms of that. But I think I've been quite lucky as well, because it's good to surround yourself with other people who are like-minded, like the way you are. But I think it was good for obviously us as a management team, where I had you around me to help me develop and grow. And then obviously when you stepped away, it was still there at the end of a phone call or a text message or whatever. But then the new sort of management team that came in with the same way, they were able to bounce ideas off them, and they were willing and looking to learn, and they were very open as well, like to doing their development plans. Recently, it was good conversations as well about where they're actually at and where they see themselves.
Yeah. I think that's something that you've picked up like naturally. I think that because I think that before, I remember thinking back when I was at supervisor, like junior manager level, like you were saying from 21 there, like I remember at that point thinking it's everything. It's just the experience that comes along with it. You get to a point where you go in, you're a general team member, because I was the same. I was a general team member, and all you have to worry about is come in, do your shift, try and do your best on it, and then leave. Then you go to supervisor, and there's a wee bit more responsibility. That there isn't as much weight on you, but you do have to be seen to sort of, you fall into this category of, well, I need to be now making sure everybody else is doing the best they can do, but also that I'm doing the best I can do, and adding you have different stakeholders. And watching you step from that role into that, but then to jump over, because obviously I was assistant and then assistant manager, and then you just jumped past that and you went straight into general manager. And I remember there was periods where Sean had to go and do sort of secondment work in different parts in the company. So there was periods of a few months, once or twice, where I had more or less sole responsibility of it. And I remember feeling one of the big things I felt at the time was the sheer weight that you felt in terms of the pressure that comes along with running that site. And I can't speak highly enough about how well you handled I know, Sean, you would be the forefront in terms of a lot of the stakeholders outside, but David, for you to be on site and to be dealing with those same stakeholders in an operational sense in terms of day to day, this is what we're going to do, when can we have this back, when we can have that back. Sean mentioned you went from 0 to 100 within a very short period of time, and not only did you have to get the grips with running the management team, but also then taking the full responsibility of the site, then all those crazy changes that are still going on with Odyssey, that you've builders, you've got the land owners who are trying to put their input, and it really is a almost operational management to the point where it's like a project management role. And you've genuinely, I have to say, the amount of ease that you, and I know it wasn't easy, but the amount of ease that you made it look like, especially from probably the team's perspective, it's really admirable. There isn't a company that I know of who wouldn't be very, very, very lucky to try and nab you up. You know what I mean?
I think it does come, like we were saying earlier, like everything goes on. It's like you do have to try and carry yourself in a certain way. I know I said earlier about them sort of letting them know that obviously no one's perfect and we're all trying to do the right thing, but maybe mistakes along the way. But what was said earlier about walking into the office, closing the door, and getting ready to put your hair out, to be honest, just standing like, what's happening here, and just taking that minute. Once you get that first wee sort of freak out, you're like think about this normally, like don't panic, like there's a way around this. And I think for the most part in Odyssey, there's kind of everything that's happened that I could think could go wrong has went wrong. Like from
one day,
everything, and I think that sort of gives you confidence as well. Obviously, it comes with experience and it happening to you, but one that it's not that bad, you can fix it.
Yeah,
it's something that helps you grow as well, because you kind of then sort of build up a wee portfolio of who you need to contact to fix this and who fixed this and whatever.
Your contingencies happen naturally.
There's loads of times I remember there's one point in particular I remember at night time closing up and Odyssey and just feeling like heart palpitations, and because the pressure does build at a certain point, but that builds you as a person as well when you get to them points, because sometimes you need to get to your worst point to get stronger. And I think that's what you can definitely do in Odyssey, because the challenges are there thick and fast, because it's not the team that's the biggest challenge. it's the circumstances around it in there and the building work and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to be, because I want to kind of go back, because I want to be able to give value to anybody who's listening, who's either thinking about development as a leader or thinking about developing leaders. And one of the things just came to mind as we're talking there, from your point of view, David, did you see your own leadership skills before becoming supervisor?
Well, I felt I had a good wee bit. I felt I had a good sort of relationship with everyone on the floor, and I kind of didn't intentionally put myself, because I think I was only really ever doing maybe 3 shifts a week, obviously more in the summertime, but generally it would be 1 during the week and 2 at the weekend. And I kind of felt towards, because I think I became supervisor in May, but I think from that November time before, I sort of came into my own, and obviously I knew the job rolled quite well, and I was able to do everything to a decent standard, I hope. But I sort of felt naturally people coming and asking different questions, and not instructing people what to do, but sort of putting everyone together to sort of right, come on, the quicker we get this done, the quicker we'll all get away, but at the same time making sure the job's done properly. And I think having that confidence going in for the actual initial supervisor interview helped a good bit, because again I had a few friends that were like, here, I think you'd be going for that kind of thing, and it wasn't a case of like, are you going to apply for that? It's like, you're applying for that. To be fair, they did push me in that direction, because at the time I was just coming out of university, and like I didn't really at the time I wasn't like, oh, in a few years I'm going to go into management. That was never the plan.
Yeah.
To be honest, at that point I didn't really have much of a plan. I was just going to university. But it is rewarding in that sense, and it's a good position. And as I say, you build a lot of confidence, and you build a lot of contacts as well with different people who you would never expect to come in contact with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, there's Sean mentioned there'd be a lot of people watching this, and sometimes it's like it's hard. You said, Sean, you said there you fall into management, and I very much felt the same way in terms like I remember when you'd first asked me to come over to Odyssey, I said no. I was like, no, not a chance. And you went, sure, come over and try it out. And I remember my first shift, and I was like, I'm not going to last a week. I genuinely remember walking up and down the approach over by lane 19 and 20 and going, I'm not going to last a week in here. Like, I don't even see where, like, as you said, David, I didn't have a plan. But then there's something, it's like something special in that team. You know, there was, Sean, it obviously very much came from your philosophy in terms of your management style. And
I was asking, did he see it? Because I mean, I can't remember before in a sort of formal position. I felt, you know, was that long ago. but the reason I was asking, because I think it's important for the formal leaders within organizations to be recognizing other people's leadership skills. Because I don't know if the people who have the leadership skills always know that they have them, you know, because a lot of times it can be a natural thing that they do day to day. They don't see that as something that they can take on in the more formal position. So yeah. I was thinking that's just interested to ask out there when it came to mind. Because you do need to recognise the skills within your team and the informal leaders are and what value they can add.
Yeah, because that's kind of the way I was, like, in the team member role. I was just coming in and it just sort of was happening naturally. Like, I think once I got the confidence initially of what the job role is and the different duties and stuff, then it just sort of followed suit. It just became natural to do that. Like, I preferred most of the time to be on the floor because I could get into the different areas and help out, and I felt like you're able to leave a better impact at the end after being in that position because you're kind of floating between everywhere.
Yeah, I think that yours is the most natural transition I've seen in any example of leadership. Like, it just, we knew it, the team knew it. You were the best. If a position came up, that you would be the person. But obviously, the style that we have in terms of that pipeline, and you know, you want people to want it because there's no point in trying to cook somebody into it because the work, like, and don't get me wrong, sometimes there's had to be those conversations. And Sean, I know you've had a couple of conversations with people who maybe it was confidence that held them back. I was just glad, David, with you that I remember when you first started, and I remember what it was like you being in the team, and you were very much one of those people who had the basics down perfect. Like, you were always on time. Apart from being hungover, you usually were turning into, what am I joking? So you know what I mean? Like, you turned up. You turned up. You were dependable. Like, at the end of the day, you knew when you're on shift. There was no micromanagement in you. We knew that when you were on shift, other people would have made sure they were working well while they're on shift with you because they didn't really want to let you down because they knew what type of worker you were. And when you have that type of influence without even trying, it's so natural. But what I think has happened in this period of a number of years now that you've been in a management role, like, I think that you've been able to take that natural influence and then match it up with the experience that comes for it. And like, we do talk about the joking, like, pulling the hair out, but that's a real uncomfortable position to be in. And I know that there's, Sean, you mentioned at the end of the shift there where you can feel like there's real pressure, and I've felt nights where you're going, like, how on earth am I keeping this together? There's been a complaint about this, or somebody's went home sick and we're 2 or 3 people down, and it's those moments that you genuinely carve out real competency but experience.
Worried about the team members too, and some on occasion their own personal circumstances as well, not even just the job itself, you know. So there is more than what just happens in the day-to-day on the floor. There's a lot of things that you take on in management where you really take on people's lives in many sense, because you do worry about them and you want to do what you can to help them, and sometimes you just can't do enough as what you would like to do. But
yeah, but I think that's
times where it sort of not overtakes your whole life, but you do think about it a lot. Like, before, when it was just a part-time job role, it was kind of coming in, do the job. Yes, you want it to do well, but once you leave, that's kind of enough. But then obviously going to the management position, you find yourself sitting thinking about it in the house, and sometimes even having dreams about the place.
Like, I think you're called neighbours, David.
You know, it just sort of, it becomes, like, as you say, like, it's more than just making sure the doors are opening and service is going. Like, you do get, like, you're working with them every day, so you get involved and you get to know people and their personal circumstances, and sometimes their personal circumstances could maybe be holding them back.
Yeah.
And it's naturally, like, come from a good place. You want to help people as much as you can, and try and sort them out in any way, and give them any advice or point them in the right direction where you can.
I think that's the difference between sort of general leadership and being able to lead a team in a way that is fit for purpose. You know, there's quality leadership there where you can make sure the job's done, make sure people turn up on time, you've got your KPIs, you're making sure the business are running. But what I think you're referring to there is the step up to sort of inspirational leadership, where you're not only able to make sure that the operation is working well as a business, but you're going so far to actually because there's a lot of coaching in it, there's a lot of mentoring in it, there's a lot of personal relationships in it, and many managers or leaders will look at you and say that's not your job role, and maybe it's not. But I think one thing that we have found, and Sean, as I said before, like with your style, the teams that have been developed have very much been people-centered leaders that we've tried to develop, people who understand that if you can tap in, like we mentioned last night, Sean, about intrinsic motivation and understanding people's internal motivations. You know, I've sat down before and spoke with people about possibility of them going for that full-time job that they want, whether it's in admin or if it's becoming a personal trainer, you know, and those relationships are where you can actually make a difference in their productivity, because if you take a genuine interest in their needs or their aspirations. David, you mentioned there about people who are going through issues. You know, I have to honestly say, and you can agree with me if you do, but I've found that the amount of employee buy-in, the amount of like relationship building that goes on when you take time and actually care and give somebody a wee bit of leeway, maybe in terms of going home a bit earlier or taking a day off when they really, really need it, what that actually does, not only for your relationship with them, but for your relationship with the whole team, is that you mentioned about that idea that people felt comfortable to come to you, but that is the culture. That's when you're leaning into a place where people love to go to work. Let's face it, everyone, if they have money at their hand, would probably take it. But I've had people say to me before that they actually love coming to work more than they love going out or meeting up with friends, because it's like a family. It's like going somewhere that you like. Maybe that's a little bit unhealthy, but I was really taken aback when those, and that's not I've had that happen multiple times. I'm sure you have had the same, where people say how much they actually appreciate the support and the relationships, more importantly, that we provide for them in that. And
yeah, because I've had probably the same as yourself, but I've had people saying pretty much along the same lines, where they kind of come to work to get a break.
Yeah,
like
where do you hear that? Like,
just to get out of the house, and like use it the other way about. You can't wait to get home from work, but they're kind of like, I can't wait to get out of this house and go to work here to get my head.
You know, so like, and that's just unheard of. You don't hear that in places, and like a lot of the companies that we're working with, sometimes people are just like beating their head off the wall, saying like, how do we get our people to just be engaged? And you can have these fancy programs, and you can have these fancy like systems and processes. And again, last night, Sean, we mentioned staff incentives and how we can do incentives that motivate them in the short term and creates a wee bit of competitiveness, but nothing ever can replace the culture that can be developed. And it's through, David, you've expressed it very, very well, which is you have a non-assuming attitude when you're approaching things. You provide a relationship for each person, and you've made sure that they feel comfortable in the setting, and when they feel comfortable, people act more themselves, and when they act more themselves, you get to see those things like we mentioned in the bubbles, where leadership, or it doesn't have to be leadership. I mean, you can't have a whole team of leaders, because otherwise you need to have somebody who's particularly good at reception, and we have them. We've actually got a pool of maybe about 5 of them, and we've got the people who are particularly good at the cleaning. So you kind of, and it's interesting how the culture and the way that you facilitate that culture allows those people's natural abilities to come out. So I think that we're one of those organizations where there's very little micromanagement needed, because the expectations are there, and it's like the unspoken word. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, I'm aware that we're probably harping on.
No, I was thinking we're going to need to cut this into 2.
But,
I wouldn't expect that long.
But you know, just in finishing, if there was somebody thinking about getting into the management role, would you say yes or no?
Yes.
No, I would say you would say yes to no.
No, I would definitely advise them to do it. It is, as much as time it can feel a bit of pressure, it is rewarding at the same time. And I think if you are going into it, obviously surround yourself with the right people and try and take the right mindset as well, that like try and create a common goal for everyone to work towards, and use what's around you as well. Like in terms of Odyssey Bowl, it was always good because there's lots of different opportunities come about, obviously with positions, but also with training courses, like doing the level 3 apprenticeship for supervision and hospitality was a big step as well, because you're sort of getting the theory side to it and you're using real life examples, and it teaches you about leadership styles and stuff that you spoke about earlier. Just using everything to your advantage. There's loads out there, obviously. Over lockdown as well, there's like open university courses that you could use like for everything. They're only like day courses and they're not even that long, but just using what you have around you to benefit yourself. And as I say, if you can surround yourself with the right people, it helps a lot, big time.
That's a good overview. I think that just on that, I think intention, we always say intention is important. And if you have the right intentions, you don't need to have, there is no one size fits all answer, and there's never going to be. But I think one of the big takeaways from you is that you have really good intentions, and people can see that, and we could see that. We could see it from the very start. And that's really interesting. But I think you clear. That was a good synopsis, sir. But
to finish our episode, I think.
Definitely. Look, David, you continue to, and you surprise us at all times, and you know, you're somebody who I'm genuinely grateful to work with you one-on-one, but also to watch you grow and to watch you develop yourself as a leader at that level for such a young age. And I know I'm saying you're really young, but you've been there, you've really grown up a wee bit in the place, haven't you? Like, and
a few grey hairs.
a few more than you had anyway. But before I let Sean finish up, I just want to say thank you very much, obviously, for coming on today, because I think that this is one of my favorites, definitely, of Culture Talks, just because you're one of ours and like you feel like family to us. So to hear your perception on the crazy things that go on and have went on to the business because of COVID, because of you stepping into that role, because of us stepping away, and it's nice to look back on it and then to celebrate you, because you should be celebrated. I think that you're somebody who can go really, really far in whatever you do, and I know you will, but we're always going to be here anyway. So thank you very much for today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for all your kind words, and thanks for having me on as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, just second what JP said as well, thanks for the day, and thank you for particularly the past year, but all the years before as well. So in finishing, I think our tagline is more fitting today than it ever is in any other episode, and that is just remember, engage, enable, and empower.
Thanks very much, guys.